You have worn yourself out through ceaseless striving. You have filled your muscles with pain and anguish. And what have you achieved but to bring yourself one day nearer to the end of your days? At night the moon travels across the sky. The gods of heaven stay awake and watch us, unsleeping, undying. This is the way the world is established from ancient times. Yes, the gods took Enkidu's life, but man's life is short. At any moment it can be snapped, like a reed in a canebrake. The handsome young man, the lovely young woman, in their prime, death comes and drags them away. Though no one has seen death's face or heard death's voice, suddenly, savagely, death destroys us, all of us, old or young. And yet we build houses, make contracts. Brothers divide their inheritance. Conflicts occur, as though this human life lasted forever. The river rises, flows over its banks, and carries us all away like mayflies floating downstream. They stare at the sun, then all at once there is nothing. The sleeper and the dead, how alike they are. Yet the sleeper wakes up and opens his eyes, while no one returns from death. And who can know when the last of his days will come? When the gods assemble, they decide your fate. They establish both life and death for you. But the time of death they do not reveal. Gilgamesh said to Utanapishtim, I imagined that you would look like a god, but you look like me. You are not any different. I intended to fight you, yet now that I stand before you, now that I see who you are, I can't fight. Something is holding me back. Tell me, how is it that you, a mortal, overcame death, and joined the assembly of the gods and were granted eternal life? Utanapishtim said, I will tell you a mystery, a secret of the gods. You know Shuruppak, that ancient city on the Euphrates. I lived there once. I was once its king, a long time ago, when the great gods decided to send the flood. 5 gods decided, and they took an oath to keep the plan secret. Anu, their father, the counselor Enlil, Ninurta, the god's chamberlain, and Ennugi, the sheriff. Yah also, the cleverest of the gods, had taken the oath, but I remember him whisper the secret to the reed fence around my house. Reed fence, listen to my words. King of Shuruppak, quickly, quickly, tear down your house and build a great ship. Leave your possessions, save your life. The ship must be square so that its length equals its width. Build a roof over it, just as the great deep is covered by the earth. Then gather and take on board the ship examples of every living creature. I understood Yah's words, and I said, My lord, I will obey your command, exactly as you have spoken it. But what shall I say when the people ask me why I am building such a large ship? Yah said, Tell them that Enlil hates you, that you can no longer live in their city, or walk on the earth which belongs to Enlil. That is your fate, to go down into the great deep and live with Yah, your Lord, and that Yah will rain abundance upon them. They will all have all they want, and more. I laid out the structure, I drafted plans. At the first glow of dawn, everyone gathered. Carpenters brought their saws and axes. Reed workers brought their flattening stones. Rope makers brought their ropes, and children carried the tar. The poor also helped, however they could. Some carried timber, some hammered nails, some cut wood. By the end of the 5th day, the hull had been built. The decks were an acre large, the sides 200 feet high. I built 6 decks, so that the ship's height was divided in 7. I divided each deck into 9 compartments, drove water plugs into all the holes, brought aboard spars and other equipment, had 3,000 gallons of tar poured into the furnace, and 3,000 gallons of pitch poured out. The bucket carriers brought 3,000 gallons of oil. 1,000 were used for the caulking, 2,000 were left, which the boatmen stored. Each day I slaughtered bulls for my workmen. I slaughtered sheep. I gave them barrels of beer and ale and wine, and they drank it away like a river. When all our work on the ship was finished, we feasted as though it were New Year's Day. At sunrise I handed out oil for the ritual. By sunset the ship was ready. The launching was difficult. We rolled her on logs down to the river and eased her in until 2/3 was under the water. I loaded onto her everything precious that I owned, all my silver and gold, all my family, all my kinfolk, all kinds of animals, wild and tame, craftsmen and artisans of every kind. Then Shamash announced that the time had come. Enter the ship, seal the hatch. I gazed at the sky, it was terrifying. I entered the ship. To Perzer-Amarui, the shipwright, the man who sealed the hatch, I gave my palace with all its contents. At the first glow of dawn, an immense black cloud rose on the horizon and crossed the sky. Inside it, the storm god Adad was thundering, while Shulat and Hanish, twin gods of destruction, went first, tearing through the mountains and valleys. Nergal, the god of pestilence, ripped out the dams of the great deep. Ninurta opened the floodgates of heaven. The infernal gods blazed and set the whole land on fire. A deadly silence spread through the sky, and what had been bright now turned to darkness. The land was shattered like a clay pot. All day, ceaselessly, the storm winds blew. The rain fell. Then the flood burst forth, overwhelming the people like war. No one could see through the rain. It fell harder and harder, so thick that you couldn't see your own hand before your eyes. Even the gods were afraid. The water rose higher and higher until the gods fled to Anu's palace in the highest heaven. But Anu had shut the gates. The gods cowered by the palace wall, like dogs. Sweet voice Aruru, mother of men, screamed out like a woman in childbirth. If only that day had never been when I spoke up for evil in the council of the gods. How could I have agreed to destroy my children by sending the great flood upon them? I have given birth to the human race, only to see them fill the ocean like fish. They sat and listened to her and wept. Their lips were parched, crusted with scabs. For 6 days and 7 nights, the storm demolished the earth. On the 7th day, the downpour stopped. The ocean grew calm. No land could be seen, just water on all sides, as flat as a roof. There was no life at all. The human race had turned into clay. I opened a hatch, and the blessed sunlight streamed upon me. I fell onto my knees and wept. When I got up and looked around, a coastline appeared, a half a mile away. On Mount Nemush, the ship ran aground. The mountain held it, and would not release it. For 6 days and 7 nights, the mountain would not release it. On the 7th day, I brought out a dove and set it free. The dove flew off, then flew back to the ship because there was no place to land. I waited, then I brought out a swallow and set it free. The swallow flew off, then flew back to the ship because there was no place to land. I waited, then I brought out a raven and set it free. The raven flew off, and because the water had receded, it found a branch. It sat there, it ate, it flew off, and did not return. When the waters had dried up and the land appeared, I set the animals free. I slaughtered a sheep on the mountain top and offered it to the gods. I arranged 2 rows of 7 ritual vases. I burned reeds, cedar, and myrtle branches. The gods smelt the fragrance. They smelt the sweet fragrance and clustered around the offering like flies. When Aruru came, she held up in the air her necklace of lapis lazuli, Anu's gift when their love was new. I swear by this precious ornament that I will never forget these days. Let all the gods come to the sacrifice, except for Enlil, because he recklessly sent the flood and destroyed my children. Then Enlil arrived. When he saw the ship, he was angry. He raged at the other gods. Who helped these humans escape? Wasn't the flood supposed to destroy them all? Ninurta answered, Who else but Yah, the clever of us, could devise such a thing? Yah said to the counselor Enlil, You, the wisest and bravest of gods, how did it happen that you so recklessly sent the great flood to destroy mankind? Is it right to punish the sinner for his sins? To punish the criminal for his crime? But be merciful. Do not allow men to die because of sins of some. Instead of a flood, you should have sent lions to decimate the human race, or wolves, or famine, or a deadly plague. As for my taking the solemn oath, I didn't reveal the secret of the gods. I only whispered it to a fence, and Utanapishtim happened to hear. Now you must decide what his fate will be.